The smell hit before the words did: burnt printer toner, cheap cologne, and the sour stench of panic sweat. That's how you know a town hall isn't just a town hall anymore. You smell it. You feel it. And this one reeked like the corporate version of a gas station bathroom taped off with crime scene ribbon. Marla sat 3 rows back in the conference room, what used to be the innovation lounge before they gutted the couches, and replaced them with stackable chairs from Office Depot's punishment aisle. She knew it was bad when the CEO strutted in holding a single-page handout instead of his usual laminated ego scroll. No slides, no banter, just a tight-lipped nod and that smug little fake pain voice he used when pretending to care. Today, we begin our transition to a leaner, more agile organization. Translation: we're about to chop off all the limbs and ask you to sprint. Her assistant of 7 years, Bethany, squeezed her arm. Marla didn't look over. She just gritted her molars and braced for impact. We've made the difficult decision to sunset several support roles, effective immediately. In addition, we're pausing non-essential perks, including on-site beverages. And just like that, Bethany was gone. No warning, no thank you. Just an HR rep hovering like a vulture, motioning toward the exit. Bethany stood up in a daze, blinked hard, and mouthed "I'm sorry" before disappearing into the hallway. Half the room clapped, like someone had just announced free pizza, not human sacrifice. Then the final insult. "But let's stay positive," the CEO chirped, cracking open a Dasani like it was champagne. "This is an exciting time for our company. We're trimming excess so we can focus on what really matters." Coffee was gone. People were gone. And what mattered, apparently, was his quarterly bonus. Now, before we go further, real quick, if you're one of the 97% of folks who listen to these stories but never hit that subscribe button, come on. It's free, it takes a second. And honestly, it's the kind of morale boost our little revenge-fueled corner of the internet desperately needs to keep cooking. Don't be like the CFO, stingy and joyless. Smash that button, and we'll keep pouring the good stuff. Back in the boardroom, Marla didn't speak. She didn't roll her eyes, didn't storm out or throw a stapler at someone's khakis like her soul desperately wanted to. She just watched as the same execs who couldn't explain the difference between a server and a sandwich beamed at each other like they'd solved world hunger with spreadsheets and buzzwords. She watched the director of ops fist bump the CFO like they'd just won a Super Bowl instead of severing 3 departments. She watched as someone wheeled the coffee cart away, real, actual wheels squeaking like a sad clown funeral as if to hammer in the point. And that's when it happened. The shift, not dramatic, not loud, just internal, a click behind the eyes. She didn't feel rage. Not yet. What she felt was clarity. A cold, almost beautiful silence inside her head, like the moment before a controlled demolition. Still, focused, waiting for the countdown. She stood up, walked to her desk, past Bethany's empty chair without flinching, opened her drawer, pulled out her phone, scrolled to one contact: Gino Coffee Trucks and Chaos. She stared at the name for a second, thumb hovering before typing. "You still looking to sell the biz? Send." No emoji, no follow-up, and then she waited. Not for them to fix what they broke, not for an apology. She wasn't naive, she'd been here too long. She knew this place better than they did, knew where the bodies were buried and who was holding the shovel. She wasn't going to fight them. She was going to outlive them. Profitably. By 10:43 a.m. the next day, Marla had rewritten the same client email 4 times because the spreadsheet she needed was locked behind Bethany's deactivated account, and IT, in its infinite wisdom, required a ticket, 3 approvals, and apparently a blood oath to fix it. She stared at the blinking cursor like it owed her money. The office was too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, funeral quiet. That eerie hush that settles in when something's gone wrong and everyone's too polite, too corporate to name it. The coffee station? Gutted. A lonely shelf where the industrial urn used to sit, now occupied by a single, half-empty tub of powdered creamer and an unopened sleeve of stir sticks like a shrine to better days. Someone had left a passive-aggressive post-it. Guess morale doesn't count as essential. Hot beverage across the floor, whispers bloomed like mold. Did you hear they let go of the whole admin team in Atlanta too? Lisa in HR cried in the stairwell. This morning 2 engineers just filed for stress leave. Marla kept her mouth shut, kept typing, kept deleting, kept thinking. By lunch, her inbox had ballooned to 73 unread messages, each one politely demanding things Bethany used to handle in 5 minutes flat. Payroll discrepancy, budget approval, print permissions, calendar conflicts. Oh, and a last-minute reschedule with the vendor they were trying to land for Q3, the one with the prickly CFO who hated being made to wait. She skipped lunch. Her stomach was a knot of acid and unfinished sentences. By 2 p.m., someone in UX cracked. It started as a sniffle in the unisex restroom, then a muffled sob, then the unmistakable sound of a grown woman punching the paper towel dispenser while whispering, "I can't do this anymore," like a mantra. No one went in. No one offered to go in, because if you cracked too, you might be next. At 3:17 p.m., Marla passed the break room and saw the CFO, that walking necktie with teeth, pouring a generic off-brand energy drink into a paper cup like it was a martini. "You get used to it," he said, catching her glance. "This is just temporary discomfort, you know? for long-term gain. He winked, actually winked, like they were in on some joke together. Marla said nothing, because if she said anything, the dam would break. Instead, she walked calmly back to her office, locked the door, and leaned her forehead against the frosted glass. Breathe in, breathe out. Then she pulled out her phone, found the thread with Gino, and tapped out. You still selling the coffee biz? This time she didn't hover, didn't hesitate. She hit send, dropped the phone onto the desk like it burned her, and sank into her chair. The building's HVAC hummed faintly in the vents, its cold, metallic purr the only sound left in a room full of ghosts. It wasn't just about the coffee. It wasn't even about Bethany, or the emails, or the sick irony of a CFO spouting temporary discomfort like he'd just survived a tour in Afghanistan. It was about watching a place she'd given 12 years to slowly rot from the inside out, while the people responsible sipped flat soda and handed out pink slips like party favors. No, Marla wasn't going to scream in the bathroom. She was going to answer with silence and then fire. Roasted, ground, delivered, with interest. Marla pulled into the parking lot of a faded strip mall off Route 43, where the only things still alive were a vape shop, a nail salon, and a suspiciously empty fitness studio with a sign that said Zumba coming soon for the past 18 months. The cafe sat at the end, Java Junction, a grim little place where the espresso machine hissed like it was nursing a grudge and the pastries looked embalmed. Perfect. Gino was already there, hunched over a formica table with 2 coffees and a manila folder fat enough to choke a horse. He looked like someone who used to sell fireworks out of his garage and only recently discovered QuickBooks. Damn, Marla, he muttered as she slid into the seat. Didn't expect you to move this fast. She didn't answer right away, just unclicked a pen and cracked her knuckles. You said you were out, she said flatly, sick of chasing invoices. Vendor drama, warehouse floods, all that, right? Yeah, but I figured I'd at least get to shop the sale around a bit, you told me first. I'm saying yes, I'll pay in full, today, he blinked. You serious? Marla pulled out a check, not company branded, just clean white paper with her initials and a private P.O. box in Akron. Gino looked at the amount, whistled low. Jesus, you laundering money or planning a coup? She smiled, thin and cold. What's the difference? He laughed, awkward and too loud, and pushed the folder across the table. All right, all the files are in here. Vendor lists, accounts receivable, equipment leases. Oh, and your old company's contract. They're still one of the big ones. Monthly recurring, low maintenance, real sweet deal. Marla didn't blink. Any flags? Nah. Their procurement guy's a zombie. Renews stuff on autopilot. You could double the invoice and he wouldn't notice for 6 months. She took a sip of the lukewarm sludge in front of her and nodded. Good, keep me out of the paperwork. Shell Corp, full ownership through my LLC. You keep your name as a consultant on file for now. I need this clean. Gino raised an eyebrow. You going full Bond villain on me? More like Civil War, she muttered. It wasn't personal yet, but it was surgical. A slice here, a stitch there, nothing sloppy, no grandstanding, just a controlled insertion into their bloodstream, like poison that tasted like progress. She left the cafe with a key to the warehouse, a list of standing orders, and a thick packet of legalese showing she now controlled contracts with 3 mid-tier office supply vendors, one of which had a cozy little tie-in with her former employer's logistics chain. By sundown, she'd already sent an email, under a pseudonym, to confirm continued supply with adjusted pricing tiers. No red flags, no alarms, just the slow turn of a screw. Back home, she poured herself a whiskey and sat at her kitchen table flipping through the contracts. Her name appeared nowhere, not on the invoices, not on the ownership docs, not even in the Shell Corp's filings. Just a string of initials, legal padding, and one accountant in Tampa who owed her 2 favors and a signed NDA. She stared at the corner of one invoice, delivery location floor 4, break room A. The same floor where Bethany used to keep 2 extra K-cups hidden behind the microwave for bad days. Well, she wasn't hiding anymore, not really, just aiming. It started with a whisper, then a gasp. Then full-blown applause in the break room at 8:17 a.m. on a gray Monday, the kind of sad, beige morning that made you question whether God hated office parks. The coffee was back. Same brand, same industrial pump dispenser, same little paper cups with the brown leaf print no one ever liked, but everyone recognized like a childhood trauma. Even the stupid laminated "please clean up after yourself" sign was back, curling at the corners like it had never left. Someone had restocked the sugar packets. Real sugar, not the stevia knockoff procurement tried last quarter. A whole case of half and half showed up in the fridge, and for 5 beautiful seconds, it felt like normalcy had returned. People cried, actually cried. Barry from compliance, who hadn't spoken aloud since 2020, murmured, "Bless the gods," like he was witnessing a miracle. A junior marketing analyst brought in homemade muffins. Somebody played Enya on a Bluetooth speaker. The office moved as one organism, caffeinated and slightly dazed. Marla walked through the scene like a ghost in her own haunting. No one noticed her smile, barely a twitch at the corner of her mouth. Sealed behind a reusable mug that now held corporate-grade Colombian roast, sourced, priced, and shipped under her thumb. They didn't know, and that was the point. No one questioned who had reapproved the order. The old vendor contract was still in the system. The purchase order auto-renewed. Procurement hadn't even noticed the rate increase yet. Marla had increased the price by 34%, just enough to pass unnoticed. She kept her tone neutral when someone from HR shouted across the floor, "They brought the coffee back." Looks like management actually listened. In the distance, she heard clapping from the sales team. And then, right on cue, the CEO emerged from his glass-walled corner office like a game show host mid-ovation, grinning like he'd personally roasted the beans with his bare hands. "I told you we're investing in people first again," he said, standing in front of the coffee station like it was a podium. "Sometimes you have to make hard calls to come out stronger. We're back, folks, stronger, leaner, recharged." He raised a cup in a silent toast. Someone actually cheered. Marla took a sip, made eye contact with no one, and turned down the hallway toward finance. Back at her desk, she logged into the Shell Corp's vendor dashboard. 2 new deliveries already scheduled for the week. Auto-replenishment engaged. Invoices labeled as premium tier fulfillment. She opened the pricing config and tapped a few keys. Another 12% increase scheduled for the next billing cycle. Subtle, surgical. She even renamed the supply tier, Signature Corporate Roasting, to give it that perfect flavor of meaningless luxury. She sat back in her chair and watched as the office buzzed back to life around her. People were laughing again. Meetings started on time. Slack channels lit up with coffee emojis and memes about resurrection. The irony was exquisite. Her coffee had become the antidote to their misery. The board thought they'd chopped the fat. What they'd actually done was slice their own jugular, and now they were paying her to stop the bleeding, 1 cup at a time. The smell of fresh brew drifted down the hall like incense at a fake church sermon. Marla closed her eyes for half a second, let it wash over her, and she opened a spreadsheet and began preparing the second hike. She wasn't here to forgive, she was here to invoice. The first finance email hit inboxes like a paper airplane, soft, polite, and entirely ineffective. Subject line, Q2 vendor billing review coffee services, body, hi all, noticing a slight uptick in refreshment expenses. Anyone know if we approved a new rate tier? Just trying to reconcile the variance. Thanks. Marla read it over lunch, dipping a fry into her milkshake with the same lazy grin she reserved for budget meetings and tax-dodging billionaires on LinkedIn. The CFO was finally stirring, like a cat noticing the goldfish bowl was half empty and the water smelled funny. A little late but adorable. By the end of the week, the slight uptick became a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet became a problem. Turns out the cost of premium corporate roasting had tripled since Q1. And no one, not the CFO, not procurement, not even the sweaty finance intern with 3 monitors and a god complex, could find a direct line to the vendor. Every invoice was auto-paid. Every support email bounced. The contact number listed on the paperwork led to a voicemail box that simply said, "You've reached the office. Please leave a message. We'll return your call as soon as possible." It never did. Marla had made sure of that. They tried digging through the LLC's records. The company was registered in Delaware, layered behind 2 legal proxies and a holding firm called Rust Belt Solutions, Inc. That sounded like it sold tractor parts. The address? A rented mailbox in Akron. The listed owner? Gino's cousin, who lived in Florida and hadn't paid income tax since 2012. Marla sipped her coffee, and read every forwarded message with the giddy tension of a gambler watching the roulette wheel slow. HR tried to calm the troops. Issued a mass email thanking whoever brought the coffee back and reassuring staff that no corners were being cut on quality or care. Finance, meanwhile, looked like they were passing kidney stones in real time. By midweek, the CFO called an urgent sync to discuss cost control initiatives. Translation: he wanted to gut the budget again. Back to instant coffee and maybe a Keurig tucked in a janitor's closet like a dirty secret. Marla beat him to the punch. She sent out a friendly just checking in from the vendor email, offering a revised volume discount program that on paper looked generous but in reality locked them into another 3 months of auto-renewing hell at 2.9x markup. They clicked accept without reading the fine print. And just to twist the screw a little tighter, she scheduled the Q3 invoice for a Friday, right before payroll closed. Panic started quietly. Procurement pinged her fake vendor address 3 times. The messages got shorter, sweatier. "Hey, quick question about the rate hike. Need to speak ASAP. Manager is asking for contact. We are getting pressure to renegotiate. Please respond." She didn't. Instead, she signed a new delivery deal with one of their competitors across town, an old client from her brother-in-law's Rolodex who was sick of their own supplier's delays. That deal. Twice the margin, half the effort. The first crate of beans left the warehouse with her initials stamped under the barcode. Meanwhile, the office remained blissfully unaware of the incoming storm. The coffee kept flowing. Morale was decent for once. People even stayed late again. But in the CFO's war room, budgets were bleeding out like a slow head wound, and Marla, disguised as their savior, was quietly selling them their own lifeline by the ounce. She closed her laptop at 5:03 p.m., walked past the break room, and watched as 2 junior analysts clinked coffee cups like they were toasting a treaty. They didn't know they were sipping on debt, and they never saw the invoice coming. The leak came from inside the house. Someone in finance, probably that overworked intern with the caffeine twitch and a grudge, screenshotted the Q2 invoice, slapped it into a Slack channel titled #burn it down, and within 3 hours, the entire office knew exactly how much they were paying for coffee, and more importantly, that it might be cut again. The reaction wasn't subtle. A copywriter from brand strategy flipped a whiteboard. Two interns in HR burst into tears mid-Zoom. The dev team walked out, all 12 of them. Just packed up their laptops, threw middle fingers in the air, and marched across the parking lot like it was Normandy and someone had canceled D-Day's catering. Arla watched from the window. She didn't smile, not exactly, but her jaw unclenched for the first time in weeks. By 2 p.m., the CFO called an emergency meeting. HR was already issuing apology emails faster than they could be spell-checked. The CEO, red-faced and sweating through his non-iron button-down, demanded answers in all caps. Who authorized this contract? The procurement manager tried to play dumb. Must have been auto-renewed. Same vendor from last year. And then came the kicker. The CFO, convinced he'd found the smoking gun, got legal involved. That's when they hit the wall. The outside counsel poked through the Shell Corporation's structure like a kid digging through a cereal box for the toy. Took them 2 days. 2 days of silence and spiraling executive rage while the rest of the office whispered about the walkout like it was folklore. Then the email came in. We've identified ownership. The CFO opened the file on a Zoom call with legal and nearly swallowed his tongue. Owner of record, Rustbell Solutions LLC controlling interest, Rustbell Holdings registered signatory, M.L. Ward Marla. The CEO choked. She owns the coffee, the CFO stammered. The lawyer cleared his throat. She owns the supply chain. Silence. Then panic. They tried to terminate the contract, called the vendor line again. Emailed, threatened, screamed. The clause hit like a guillotine. No early termination permitted for 6 months post-renewal. Penalties include full payout of remaining invoices plus legal fees. And thanks to that generous volume discount program they'd signed, they'd pre-authorized the next 3 quarters at a rate that made Colombian emeralds look like budget jewelry. The CFO slammed his laptop shut so hard the webcam cracked. Marla, she was already 3 steps ahead. She sent a formal notice, signed by Gino as vendor rep, reminding them of the shared values around workplace morale and premium corporate experience. The message was polite, uplifting, almost spiritual in its sanctimony, but buried in the fine print was a single line: we reserve the right to publish contract terms if public misrepresentation occurs. Which legally meant, if you smear me, I'll leak your dumb little bonus clause to every local paper with a press pass. She didn't need to shout, didn't need to rant, because the employees were doing it for her now, loudly, furiously, and from below. It wasn't revenge. It was a coup, 1 cup at a time. He summoned her like a king summons a peasant. No calendar invite, no assistant follow-up because, well, he'd fired them all. Just a brusque call from the CEO's direct line. Hey Marla, you got a sec to swing by my office? Just a quick chat. Quick chat in CEO language meant one of 3 things. 1, you're fired. 2, I want something I don't deserve. Or 3, I've realized too late that I messed with the wrong person and now I'd like to pretend we're friends. Marla brought her own coffee. A tall paper cup, steaming and bold, with signature corporate roasting printed on the sleeve in tasteful matte gold. It cost them $11.63 per unit, plus shipping. She made sure it arrived in the exact same sleeve as the complimentary office cups, just special. She walked into the glass-walled lair like she owned the carpet, which, if you traced the corporate billing structure, she probably technically did. Marla, the CEO said, fake warmth slathered on his voice like expired mayonnaise. So good to see you. She sat, didn't offer a handshake, didn't offer an explanation, just crossed her legs and took a long, slow sip. Still tastes better than vengeance, she said, and let it hang. He chuckled, tense. Listen, we've had some unfortunate confusion lately. Miscommunication, supply issues, budget friction. You know how these things go. Marla nodded. Sounds expensive. He ignored that. The board's concerned. Not angry, concerned. We all want what's best for the company. And that means finding common ground. You've clearly leveraged your resources quite impressively. She raised her cup slightly. Cheers to resourcefulness. He leaned forward, elbows on desk, eyes doing that let's pretend I still have power twitch. Here's the thing. If you were to reduce the rate, let's say maybe even donate a quarter's worth of supply, that kind of goodwill could go a long way toward repairing trust. Marla burst out laughing, not a chuckle, a laugh, short, sharp, and aimed straight between his ego's eyes. You want me to donate? She asked, tilting her head. You mean like how you donated Bethany's job, or how you donated morale right out of the break room? He tried to play wounded. That's not fair, Marla. You know how difficult those decisions were. She took another slow sip, let the steam coil around her smirk. You could have kept my assistant for less than you're paying for this cup. And let me guess, you want me to make it right? He cleared his throat, shifted in his seat. I'm offering a chance to be a team player. You don't want the board to see this as vindictive. Her smile turned to stone. Oh, honey, I want them to see it exactly as it is. Calculated, clean, and completely reversible if they come to me directly. The CEO blinked. Wait, you want to speak to the board? I want to speak only to the board, she said, because this isn't a supply issue. It's a value issue. And if they want my rates lowered, they can pay me for the privilege of that conversation. He opened his mouth. She raised a hand, and just to be clear, next time you want to summon me, you go through the rep email like everyone else. He sat there, speechless, blinking like a broken LED. Marla stood, dropped the empty cup in his trash can, and walked out without another word. Outside the door, she could hear the whoosh of his office chair spinning as he stood up to yell at someone, anyone. But no one answered, because power doesn't knock. It enters. They dressed it up real nice. External vendor review. Scheduled at 9 o'clock a.m. sharp in conference room Delta, like it was some routine quarterly audit and not a silent coup with hors d'oeuvres. Marla arrived at 8:58, black slacks, pressed blazer, tablet in one hand, iced espresso in the other. No entourage, no nerves, just a quiet kind of power, like an assassin walking into a bank. Board members sat around the table in a staggered V formation, 6 suits, one overpriced consultant, and a chair that was supposed to be for the CEO but remained suspiciously empty. No one offered her coffee. She brought her own. Miss Ward, the chairman said, nodding like he wasn't sweating under his Brooks Brothers collar. We appreciate you coming in on such short notice. We're here to discuss the evolving nature of our relationship with your firm. She smiled, tapped her tablet. The lights dimmed and the first slide lit up the wall behind her. When cheap costs more, a case study in short-sighted leadership, the room went still. Slide 2, a clean, unforgiving chart showing morale ratings before and after the original cutbacks. Slide 3, 3 columns, coffee expense, employee retention, and net productivity. The first soared, the other 2 cratered. Red, obvious, embarrassing. Then the money shot. Slide 4, cost of Bethany's salary, $51,000/year. Loss from failed Q1 initiative post-layoffs, $740,000. One board member coughed, another swore under his breath. She let the silence stretch long and surgical. I didn't sabotage your company, she said coolly. You did that yourselves. I just packaged the consequences and handed you the receipt. The consultant tried to pivot. We're open to renegotiation of rates, assuming there's a shared interest in resolution. Oh, I'm very interested in resolution, she replied. In fact, click, new slide, a projected growth plan, warehousing, distribution, franchise outreach. A logo at the bottom, Rust Belt Roasting Group. My company is scaling. I can reduce your rates by 20% if you fund my expansion. A board member leaned forward. You want us to invest in you? I want you to invest in survival, Marla said, because if you don't, this little brewing problem becomes a competitor problem. And I'll take your dev team with me. Dead silence. Then the chairman cleared his throat. You're asking us to pour gasoline on the bridge and hand you the match. I'm offering you a seat at the table before I start building my own. They deliberated for 10 minutes, quiet voices, glaring phones. One of them muttered something about optics and containment. Then came the terms, funding granted, rate drop approved, expansion greenlit. But one final clause, signed and notarized before the next billing cycle, Marla Ward will never set foot on company premises again. Not as a vendor, not as a guest, not even as a memory. She nodded, I accept. She packed her things, paused at the door, and looked back at them, these brittle suits clutching their coffee like communion wine, pretending they still had power. Next time you decide to cut corners, she said, maybe don't do it with someone who knows where you hid the knives. Then she walked out, and no one dared follow. The news came on a Tuesday, quiet, clinical, and buried under a euphemism. Effective immediately, Craig Hensley will be transitioning out of his role as CEO. We thank him for his years of visionary leadership. No fanfare, no farewell bagels. Just a half-hearted bullet point at the bottom of an internal memo sent at 6:13 a.m. Digital equivalent of being buried behind a dumpster. Marla read it while waiting for her 8:30 meeting downtown, stirring her cold brew with a compostable straw, as if the flavor depended on it. Visionary leadership, huh? The same visionary who asked her assistant to shave a rounding error off the Q1 budget. The same man who sipped her coffee while trying to sweet-talk his way out of a hemorrhaging contract. She closed the email. She already knew who his replacement would be, interim, of course. The kind of no-face nameplate executive who lives in LinkedIn shadows and speaks only in metrics. Her phone buzzed. A new contract signed, regional HQ of a logistics firm in Columbus, one of 3 competitor accounts she'd locked down that week. They came to her, desperate for reliability after hearing the rumors. Apparently, Signature Corporate Roasting was getting a reputation, not just for the beans, but for what followed them. Clean supply, clear terms, and one hell of a clause if you crossed her. She didn't even offer discounts anymore. She offered reliability with bite, and they bit. Her former workplace was still under contract, still paying the bloated legacy tier premium, still clinging to the illusion of normalcy, while hemorrhaging money from every perk they once proudly cut. They couldn't get out of the contract until Q4. She planned to make every invoice sing. The next day, she was headed to a meeting with a corporate hotel group downtown when her driver took a wrong turn and passed the old office. She didn't ask him to stop, didn't even flinch, but her eyes drifted almost reflexively to the entrance. And there he was, the former CEO, Craig, cardboard box in hand, no suit jacket, no entourage, just a sad little stack of desk debris, 2 picture frames, 1 mug, and a wilted fake plant that looked as tired as he did. He moved like gravity had turned personal. Marla watched him step onto the sidewalk, glance around like someone might be waiting for him, like maybe the world owed him one last clap on the back. But no one came, not even coffee. He had nothing in his hand but failure and regret. She didn't wave, didn't roll down the window, didn't indulge in the fantasy of a final zinger shouted across the street. She just took a long sip from her thermos, double roast, dark as justice, and said nothing at all. Because some victories don't need applause, they just need to be witnessed. What I love about this story is how it flips power without ever raising a voice. It's not just revenge, it's restraint weaponized. Sometimes the best justice doesn't come from fighting louder, it comes from building smarter. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.